All right. So, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thanks for joining the first Antrea community meeting of the year 2023. Happy New Year to everyone. And we are therefore ready to start with this meeting. So, for today, I have on the agenda a discussion of OFNet performance enhancements. I don't know if we have any other topic. Chan, I believe that the last time you mentioned that you wanted to bring up some discussion of outstanding user-reported issues. Is that correct?
Yes. I think if we got time today, we
Okay,
could have a
perfect.
discussion.
Perfect. So maybe let's start with the OFNet announcements, and then we can go with the discussion of these customer reported issues. And if we don't go through all the issues today, we can finish them in the next community meeting. I believe that Ashish joined this meeting to present about the OFNet announcements. So I will probably just hand it over to Ashish, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, hi. I'm Ashish. I've been working in the OVS team at VMware and recently spent some time on the libopenflow and the OFNet library of the Antrea. So I'll share my presentation now. So can you see this diagram that I have, a PDF document?
We can see your screen, yes.
Okay, great. So let me give you just a very brief background of what we are discussing. So in Antrea, we have the OVS, which actually does the data path. And this OVS is programmed by uh, the Antrea agent. But if you look down, it's actually a set of libraries that we use. So we have this library called libopenflow, which majorly does the encoding, decoding of the OpenFlow messages. Previously, we were using 1.3, and recently we coded the 1.5 support, which is now integrated. Apart from this, this library also has some support for different protocol encoding, decoding, uh, like ICMP and other protocols, and it also provides some utility to read the messages and buffer the messages over the socket. So it talks to the OVS. Um, the module that drives or uses this libopenflow is the OFNet, which actually implements the logic, like kind of you can say the first level of the controller logic, the OpenFlow controller, which so this implements like kind of a switch implementation. You can program the OFNet using some kind of a like a graph method where you can program different entities. It has an OVSDB driver, support for a transaction, and packet in handling. And the user of the OFNet is called an app or an application. Currently, the application is Antrea agent, or you can also trigger different scenarios using the unit test, which which acts as the same level as the app. We'll discuss about this command line a little later. So when we coded this and discussing with Wenying, we found that the OFNet code has some like few enhancements that is possible, which will make the whole code better. So I have listed the points over here. So the way this discussion started was that we encountered a deadlock bug. This was observed, I think, once only, as far as I recall. This was observed in some customer site where the OFNet code kind of just blocked on certain load condition. By load condition, I mean that there were a lot of flows getting programmed at the OVS. And under certain condition, we are not sure. We still don't know the root cause, but it kind of deadlocked. And Vening added some code, but we can further enhance that code and make it better. So as a part of this, we obviously have to fix this bug. But to fix this bug, what we have to do is we have to add some way where we can actually do some kind of a load or stress test, because apart from being able to reproduce this issue, it's a good thing to have a test case which can load up the entire OFNet and the libopenflow code, the code, so that we can iron out any other issues that we encounter. So that's the plan, to add this test. Also, we found that there are certain interfaces. By interface, I mean that like from whenever a packet is received by OFNet, it's sent to the application or Antrea agent. It's still like a function call. We would like to make it like a buffered channel, and so that the OFNet code doesn't get locked up or delayed because the application returns takes more time than what is usually acceptable. So we want to not block the OFNet code. One more thing that I found is that whenever we program a flow to the OVS, OpenFlow doesn't provide a very clear feedback whether the flow addition was successful or not. So right now, the way we kind of account for the flows programmed in the OVS is using a flow stats. But OpenFlow has a better way to do this kind of a monitoring. It's actually called a flow monitor. And the way it's better is because once you program a flow monitor in the OVS, it will just generate asynchronous messages to the controller on any flow addition, deletion. So that way you get a feedback of what's happening at OVS. In case for some reason OVS decides to delete a flow, you again get a feedback. So this is a good way to keep a check on of the flows which is there at the OVS. One other thing that we found is that the logging at the OFNet is not it's really bad. So in case now we get any issue, any bug, we don't know where it is, if it's in the OFNet, which part of the code failed, because the logs are actually not there. So this has to be added on a high priority, as well as, so we need to add error logs and debug log to for obviously debugging any issue. The documentation at the OFNet level is again can be enhanced further. Okay, now this command line tool. Now I don't know whether this makes sense or not, but this is something which I thought. So right now, to trigger this OFNet code, we have the Antrea agent, of course. So but or the unit test. But I was just thinking of adding a command line tool so this command line tool will trigger OFNet and libopenflow, something very similar to the OVS OFCuttle. We can have something called OFNetCuttle or something like that, so that this becomes like a standalone utility to program program add or delete flows using this code base. So just an idea, maybe not a high priority, but probably a good utility to have. Again, right now, so coming to this part. So right now, whatever is implemented in OFNet is obviously what is needed by Antrea agent, but maybe in future you need more OpenFlow features. which obviously is not here. So this is kind of an open-ended thing where probably the folks working at the Antrea agent can think like any other feature that they would be needing in future, so that we can plan it ahead of time. Again, this is something which is, I'm not sure, but do we need to explore the AFXDP or the DPTK support at OVS? This is more at the OVS level. Are we planning to move in this direction? So again, getting to know in advance would help. That's all I had. Any comment or feedback?
Thanks, Ashish. Thanks for your presentation. Please go ahead with questions.
Ashish, thanks for sharing this. I always have some questions about AFXDP and DPTK data paths of OS support. So I want to take this opportunity to ask you some questions. For AFXDP, I'm not sure whether my understanding is correct, that is this only about moving the data path to user space, and would it affect the use case of workloads? Does it require the workload, the application must be developed based on XDP or like DPTK based application?
No, okay. So it's the data path of the OVS which will move. So right now we are using the kernel module as the data path. If you move to AFXDP or DPDK, we have a different data path. So, but the open flow, the messages, the interface, that doesn't change. But when we move to AFXDP or DPDK, the data path code is entirely different. So, and I believe we do support everything that the kernel module today supports in the DPDK or the AFXDP data path, but there could be certain features which might be missing. I don't have that list right now. I can get it, but mostly the interface will not change. But the second limitation, of course, would be that at least for DPDK, I know that it doesn't work on, like it works on only certain specific NICs. I can tell you, I mean, about AFXDP, that it probably, again, may have the same limitation, but I'm not very sure about AFXDP today. I can find it out.
Okay. My major concern for moving to AFXDP is like whether it would affect the application itself. That means whether the application can continue rely on the TCP/IP stack of its own namespace, whether it can receive traffic from its network interface like before, or it will have to move to use some XDP library to develop the application. With AFXDP data paths, where there could the container still connected to a VETH device to the OS bridge? Will that change?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure as of now, but I'll find it out and tell it to you. I actually didn't work on AFXDP, so, but I'll definitely find and tell it to you. But by application, you mean the container trying to like bind to a normal dev device? Is that what you're?
Yeah. I mean regular applications like HTTP server that receive traffic from normal interfaces, virtual interfaces. Yeah.
Okay. I have to find that and I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, who was this speaking? My screen somehow.
I'm Chuan
Okay.
Tian. Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Curiosity? Anything you'd like to ask Ashish? Waiting a few more seconds. Okay, so Ashish, which areas do you think your winning will be tackling first?
I think it will be some changes in this deadlock bug, logs, and the buffered channel. This will be probably we are aiming for the next release, and then we'll work on the stress test documentation after that.
Awesome, thank you. Perfect. And it seems there are no further questions for Ashish, so perhaps we can move to the next topic for today's meeting. And Chan, I don't know how you want to go ahead for discussing customer reported issues, so I'll just let you lead the conversation from here.
Okay, let me share my screen. So, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Yeah. Currently, we have 18 open issues for future request, and I have opened a few for today's discussion, and they are mainly about service external IP, egress, and net policies. And I think the issues themselves are valuable, and I want to collect more inputs from the community. Oh, this is not a feature request. I removed the label. Yeah, let's start from this one. This is for a feature request to allow multiple service sharing single IP, and it use the use case of Meta IP as an example. And I think this feature request makes sense, and I proposed to just allowing users to specify the same IP for different services, and it could it will automatically work when the services are using different port, and if they are using same port, they cannot work. So we will not report the requested learnbans IP to the status of the second service, and let users to correct the configuration, and we will generate events for this service to alert this warning. I think it should basically work, and also got some comments for Antonia and Xu and the user. So if we any comments for this feature request? If not, I think it should be clear, and what we need to decide is whether we should just include this implementation in this or upcoming release. Not sure if I explain the issue itself clearly. I think it's a small change that just previously we don't allow you to specify same IP for different services. Now we allow it and check for conflicts. If no more comments, I think we could move to next one. And perhaps if we get bandwidth in this release, we could find someone to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, I at least I didn't have time to think thoroughly about this problem, but I don't see any problem with sharing the same IP for multiple services. So your proposal should be good. And does anyone else have any comment on this issue? Seems not. So maybe Chan, we can move to the next one.
Sure. The second one is from Zheng Sheng, and I think he wanted to this feature to resolve one problem that for some services created automatically by some controllers, there is no chance to update the annotation to let Antrea allocate one bus IP for that, or even user manually annotate the service. It will automatically cleared by the controller who is responsible for managing it. So his proposal was to have an annotation on one external IP pool, and meaning that that external IP pool will be used for all load balance type of services when they don't have a separate annotation. I didn't reply this issue, but I thought about this requirement. My opinion is that having a unified unified external IP pool may not work for all use cases, because all services will have to use same external IP pool, and I wonder if we could just move the service annotation to namespace level, not move to, but just have another layer of annotation. For example, when the namespace has when the service itself has the annotation, the Antrea controller will allocate the external IP from that IP pool. When the service itself doesn't have the annotation, Antrea will check the annotation on the namespace, and the annotation is in the same format, just two layer of annotation. And if the namespace itself have the annotation, Antrea will still use that IP pool to allocate the IP. There are two benefits I can think of. First is that not all services in the cluster have to use one external IP pool. And I think it may be typical to use namespace as the boundary of resource sharing. And the other benefit is that it could also resolve the problem that user don't have to annotate every service, and especially when the service annotation is cannot updated by user. The third benefit is that user don't have to know another annotation. We could just use the same annotation as before, just annotate it on the namespace. Not sure if others have opinions on this requirement, and Zheng is not here today, so I will also check with him and just reply here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific comment, just the proposal from John Shong. The only thing that the only comment that I have is that typically, if you have to annotate something as being the default, then we need also some additional check to make sure that only one pool is annotated as default, right? So that's
Yeah.
the strange part.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, since Genshin is not here, perhaps this will need additional discussion on GitHub to get something.
I will leave my comments here and check for his opinion.
Sounds good.
And the next one is about egress. Currently, we can only assign one egress IP to each egress object. That means that if the egress IP is statically allocated, it doesn't have failover support. And if the egress is dynamically allocated from external IP pool, it has the failover support. However, the egress IP, a single egress IP can only work on a subnet of nodes only, because the egress IP must be in the same subnet as the node. So if the cluster has more than one subnets, the nodes are in different subnets. Only a few of the nodes can be used as the external node. And when the nodes that are in same subnet are all done, the egress will no longer work, regardless of which node the traffic comes from. So it's very typical. It's a very typical scenario that on cloud, the whole cluster stays in different subnets, and each subnet maps to one available zone. And so you know the point of available zone is that they provide the HA support as a unit of availability. So it's not good that we allocate we use the one single available zone as the egress nodes. So I think about this requirement and proposed one approach to address the limit, that is allowing a secondary egress IP and a secondary egress IP pool, external IP pool, to be used by an egress. That means that user could request one egress IP from one external IP pool and allocate a secondary egress IP from another external IP pool, and each external IP pool will map to one available zone. So people could get the HA support even the whole available zone is done, as long as any of the available zone is up, the egress traffic could still go through the available one. And that could also address the limit of static egress, meaning that I could use two different IPs, which is physically assigned to two nodes. And even I don't use external IP pool, I could get HA support as long as the two nodes are not done at the same time. Yeah. I think user is the user who reported the issue is fine with the approach, but this change this change requires some efforts to implement it. Not sure if anyone has any other comments or any other approaches want to suggest.
Anyone?
I will also create an issue for the design and for the proposal and the design of implementation, and perhaps I will also need to do some POC to verify that this approach could work on the above scenarios. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's move to next one. This is for the nail policy feature. I think the use case is that when in some distros, especially on cloud, it's very typical that the control plane nodes are not showing up in the as Kubernetes nodes. The control plane components run out of the cluster, and there is no way to select the IPs of the control plane components as using existing selector. For example, you cannot use node selector because there are no control plane nodes, and you cannot use port selector because they are not running as ports. At least not in the cluster itself. So when user want to allow control plane components to access this service, currently the only way is that they must specify they must figure out the control plane components IP and specify them as a IP block in network policies. So this user requests this feature that they want to leverage the endpoint object to get the IP of control plane components. For example, typically there is a service named Kubernetes in the default namespace, and its corresponding endpoints have all control plane IPs. So they propose to have an endpoint selector, and it could be just the name and namespace of the endpoint as the form of the ingress rule. Then that Antrea to get the IPs in the endpoint object itself and use them as the source IP. But as Jianjun replied, this is very specific to one use case because it does not make sense to use endpoint selector for any other use cases, especially actually the endpoints mean for the backend of service, which usually means the destination instead of the source. But anyway, I think the requirement itself makes sense, but just no idea what's the best approach here to address the requirement.
Well,
yeah.
Jan, perhaps do you have any option? I see that you have been mentioned it several times on this PR.
Yeah, that's why I brought you here. See you want some feedback on this feature, on this requirement. Yeah. So I want to highlight here. It has been more than half a year.
Yeah, I think I've must have missed it a couple of times. I will take a more closer look at this, but on top of my head, I agree with that, all the things that Chen said, that this is, for a very specific use case. I mean, it might be it might be good to think of, maybe some other API design to solve this use case, because I don't know if the endpoint selector will be very confusing for the other users on what's the difference between this and the two services that we provide, because they're gonna look exactly the same. And it's going to be really tough for us to explain that when you use the two services, we will leverage the Antrea proxy thing, so that we're actually filtering on something other than the IPs, whereas if you're using endpoint selector, we're actually filtering on the IP. I think both should do essentially the exact thing, but it's kind of as Trent said, for really normal use cases, it feels really sort of redundant and confusing to me for normal use cases. So I probably needed to think a little bit more on this.
Yeah.
Sure, I think there's another problem here. I think in many cases, the endpoint's IP for control plane is actually a load balance IP. So that probably doesn't work for ingress policy.
You mean the IP in the endpoints object itself is a load balance IP,
Right.
and will to be used as the source IP of the ingress traffic.
Right.
Okay.
For example, in EKS, probably also the case for GKE and AKS. I think the control plane service endpoints IP actually load balance IP, the private link IP actually. Because that IP is different from the source IP when the control plane nodes reach ports.
Okay, then yeah, then it's even more difficult to figure out the source IP of control plane components.
Right.
Then it doesn't sound like an issue specific to Antrea. Any other thing that implemented nail policy could have this issue, right?
Yeah, and actually, I think what I said may be wrong for GKE and AKS. I think for GKE AKS, they're probably using there's a project called network proxy, could be network proxy or something. Basically a proxy for control plane node to reach workload ports and the workloads nodes through a reversed connection proxy.
Oh, you mean the API server proxy?
Yeah. It's called API server connection proxy or something.
Okay.
I don't even know in that case what will be the source IP the port sees. But definitely would not be the endpoint IP, I believe.
Okay. Got it.
It will be the IP of the proxy server pod, which runs on the workload.
Should be.
That's only for GKE, not for EKS?
EKS is not in proxy. I think EKS probably requires a. Wait a minute. I think we look into that for EKS, right? EKS probably don't really assume you always have connectivity from control plane nodes to ports. Unless your ports are using public IP, that's my understanding.
Okay. Because I think the problem of GKE could be resolved by just having a port selector if the source IP is
sure.
Yeah, but for EKS, if they are not
Sure.
using the
Maybe that is not an issue for EKS, since EKS don't really assume you can always enable the connectivity from control plane to ports. So probably you cannot assume there will be a traffic from control nodes to ports.
Okay, then we need more clarification from the user. Whether how it is guaranteed that that there is a traffic from control plane components with the service in the cluster.
Yeah. but I mean, it's just like probably different distros or different managed service may have different implementations. So you will see different source IP for the traffic. I don't know if we can figure out a way to support all the cases.
Sure. Yang, could you follow up this with the user? I think he is watching this issue and wants some feedback. I think we could at least get some clarification from him.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Next is also for name policy, but for audit logging. Currently, we don't have namespace and name information of the traffic endpoint. For example, when the traffic comes from a port or is designated to a port, we just log the IP in the audit log, but not the namespace and the name of the IP. So the users, I think there are different people asking same thing. Maybe they are from same team. They're asking for the more information to be added to the audit logging, so that they can to meet their requirement. I think Anthony is already and Jenny are already following up this requirement. I'm not sure what's your latest thought about this one, whether this is a valid one or it should be addressed in another mechanism like traffic exporter.
Well, I think it's a valid question that they ask, right? Because it would be like useful to have that information in the local audit policy logs, but it's not really possible for us to add that information without changing the current architecture, right? Because we don't really want to have like each agent monitors the full set of pods in the cluster to be able to map IP addresses to namespaces and names. I think maybe that would put too much strain on the API server, and also there's kind of like duplicate functionality with what we're trying to do in the flow exporter and with SIA. But I do understand like the point of view that some users may not want to deploy SIA and still be able to have that information in the local audit policy logs. I think the only approach we would have would be to like take those local audit logs and send them to a central place where we can add the missing information, and that starts to be very similar to what the flow exporter is doing. Maybe we could have a mechanism to have the flow aggregator generate those network policy logs in a similar format. I think that could be a solution, because the flow aggregator should already receive flow records for all the denied connections, for example, and it's already mapping IP addresses to pod namespaces and names. So we could have the flow aggregator be able to write those comprehensive network policy logs to disk, and then they could be collected by the user in a way without having to deploy SIA or ClickHouse potentially. It would just be the same kind of network policy logs that we have locally, but we would add the namespace and name information.
Okay.
In a way,
Then-
it's even easier to look at the logs than before, because you would have like a single file to look at instead of having to look at local files on the different agent nodes.
Yeah. But that sounds like that there is no point to look at the local audit logging files if that centralized logging has more information, and if it does not miss any flow, right?
It should not miss any flow. I think it's always possible to have some flows missing if there's too much information generated, because we do like contract polling. Sorry. It should not miss more flows than the local audit logs, because both of them rely on the packet-in mechanism from OVS. And in both cases, we have meters to rate limit the number of messages we process in the agent. Because as you know, if we have like a network policy that drops traffic, otherwise it would be possible to kind of like do a DOS attack on the agent where you generate like you keep generating the same kind of UDP packets, for example, and all those UDP packets would hit the network policy rule and be dropped if we were to process like a packet-in message for each of those UDP packets. It would put too much strain on the agent, and so we limit the packets, I believe, to 100 packets per second, 100 messages per second. But that limit applies to both the local audit logs and to the flow exporter drop information. So
Okay,
there's no
got it.
difference. In theory, you can for drop connections, you can. I think we can lose information in both cases.
Got it. Thanks.
So my guess is because we don't want to like build a brand new component to be able to do that, but we could build that functionality without too much difficulty in the flow aggregator.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, then let's move to next one.
I can take the AI of. I'll see if I can comment on that issue again and like bring it to conclusion.
Okay, thank you. The next one is I think it's not what we can support for now. It wants to apply internal policy to the node itself, like some other thing I does, like Calico. But I don't think it's very feasible today, because the traffic from and to the node are not even managed by Antrea, unless using the the flexible IPAM mode, which means the node, the host network is bridged by OS, is bridged by OpenWay switch. And it's kind of similar to what external node feature does today, managing security for the node itself. So I don't have a good solution for now, unless we also bridge the host network in regular modes, like in-cap and no in-cap. But that also brings risky of and the complexity of managing the node network itself. Yeah. if anyone has any thought or any suggestion, I think we can discuss here. Otherwise, I may have to leave this issue open for.
I don't know. I think that my personal standpoint here is that Kubernetes network policy should stay away from managing node traffic that's outside of the scope. But I'm curious that you mentioned that Calico is a solution for this. Can you share briefly how Calico they do this?
Calico implement their policy at least in its default mode. It use IP tables to support the policy, right? So for container traffic, it just program the IP tables rules in the forward chain, and for host network policies, I think they just create IP tables rules in input and output chain instead of the forward chain. So it's pretty easy for it to implement a host network policy.
Okay, understood. But still, there is no solution for distinguish the policies that are applied to the node as host networking and to the pods that are in host network modes. They are both handled by the same rules, right?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, I mean, the pods that are running in host network mode, it's not like they have dedicated policies that are only enforced on those pods in host network mode. So the pod which runs in host network mode and the host networking are the same policy are enforced on both. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. Personally, I would not make an effort to try and control this. I mean, I don't know, Yang, if you have also an opinion on this matter.
To be honest, I feel very similar to what Tran feel, and this is also something that when we talked about admin network policy, we've been discussing upstream, and in Kubernetes upstream, if I remember correctly, because it has been a year, give or take, when we're still discussing the specifics of admin network policy. And if I remember clearly, this was the area where the upstream Kubernetes people say that we don't want to touch this. So, but given the admin network policy stuff, we weren't even touching north-south traffic. It won't be surprising, but still, I don't feel like we have enough use cases maybe to justify. Maybe we wanted to bring this into Antrea cluster network policy for now. This is my opinion.
Got it. Thanks, Chan.
But Chan, I remember earlier Cody also raised the similar requirements. Actually, I forgot the details. I'm not sure it's exactly the same or not. But I think earlier in the roadmap diagram by Cody, I think he also had an item for low-level policy. Is that what you remember too?
Filed in GitHub. I don't quite remember that.
Oh, it's probably not in GitHub. Probably it's in our. I'm not sure it's in any document he has or just our internal discussion.
Okay. Okay. At least we don't really receive many similar requests from users themselves. This is the first one I received from users. Yeah, and yeah.
Besides
since
Calico, do you know any other thing I can support policy on node traffic?
I think using eBPF could also do so. So perhaps Cilian could do that. I didn't check that, but I just think about it. I think it's possible because they have the hook to handle ingress traffic and egress traffic. So
Okay.
there is no technical problem to support that. Yeah, I could check that offline.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. The last one is about implementing the net policy status API in upstream. I think everything is ready. Just no resource is allocated for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that fall under our radar for some reason. Is there anything related to the status of a policy also merged in the recent releases? Is it on the agent side where when you were working on some OVS realization statuses as well that got merged in recent releases? I remember.
It doesn't rely on that. We already have status report from agent to controller a long time ago.
Yeah, I know. I know that. I was just wondering, for the other thing, is it some more detailed status?
I think currently Kubernetes net policy status has only one condition. And it's about, I remember it's about whether you can support endpoint,
Support
endpoint,
okay.
the port range. That's what I remember. I'm not sure whether there is any change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume the status field was set out to design to be more generic than that, but for the upstream case, maybe right now the only error that can make it pop up, which makes sense, is that we don't support the import, but obviously that we do. So yeah, you can design me on this as well. So I'll keep it under the radar, and we'll fit in one of the get this in one of the releases.
Sure, thank you.
I remember that this is also one of the other topics where the community will never reach an agreement over the years. So that's why there is no solution as a part of the network policy specification. Is that correct, Yang?
Yeah.
Well, but it should be fine if we can find a solution which is good enough for Antrea network policies at least.
Okay, that's all for my list today. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chan. And we're also reached the end of the scheduled meeting time. So before closing this meeting, there is a comment from Janjun and on the chat, as you can read, that it might be a valid requirement to support security policies on node traffic. We can probably, according to Janjun, we can try and add a new CRD to differentiate it from network policy for pod. So that's an idea that we can work on. Before we finish today's meeting, is there any other topic that you would like to bring up for discussion?
Not really, but I just wanted to say that if we want to support this requirement, I also strongly agree with changing that we probably need a new CRD.
That will be fine.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
just
Chan,
want
sorry.
I have one small comments that I recently I found that Octant is out of maintenance for a long time, and they haven't upgraded their Kubernetes library dependency, and there's no release. I think that at least for one year, more than 1 year. I guess that project is not in maintenance anymore. So, do we want to move to move to another visible software project for trade flow or the other feature that is we currently have with Octant? No,
Yeah,
just one.
that's a good point, but I think that your this boils down to choosing whether we want to rebuild our UI features for Antrea, right?
Yeah.
We definitely want to do that. I mean, I don't think that we are in a position or willing to take over Octant maintenance, right?
Sorry, you mean take over?
The options are two. Either we develop a new UI not based on Octant, or we take over Octant maintenance. And I think that maybe we don't want to take over to take over Octant maintenance and become maintainers for Octant. I don't think we want to do that, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that this is something that was actually, I believe, known for a few months already. So we need to take action on this front. But I also believe that we probably needed to get the feedback from the developers that have more experience with working on the front end.
Sure.
Perhaps this is something that we can bring up in the next community meeting.
Sure.
But do you guys have any candidate solutions to replace Octant in your mind?
Not yet. I just found that recently. I want to give a head up to the team. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think we talked about that before. Definitely, probably finally we should deprecate Octant support. Yeah, but I don't have a good idea what can be the new UI to replace Octant.
Yeah, I'm definitely the last person in the world that can make any sort of comment related on the UIs. I'm completely ignorant on this front. So let's bring it up as a topic for the next community meeting.
Sure.
Cool. And anything else for today? 3, 2, 1, 0. So it appears that it's all for today. So thanks everyone for attending. Again, Happy New Year. The next community meeting is should be on January the 17th, which is before the Chinese Spring Festival vacation. So it should be okay. But the one after, which is on January the 31st, I think technically this is a working day in China, but I know that many folks in China tend to take 2 weeks off around New Year's Day. So I don't know if we want to move that meeting to the first week of February, or whether we want to still keep it on January the 31st. I mean, we can also discuss this on the Antrea community channel, just food for thought. Okay, that sounds good. And the only thing left for me is to wish everyone a good evening, a good day, or a good afternoon, and talk to you in the next community meeting.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.